right, welcome everybody to the Health and Wellness and Esports panel. This is awesome. You know, this is really, really cool to see this many people turn out for a health and wellness panel. What sort of extra precautions are taken by athletes leading up to a big event and after a big event? And I'm sure you have, both of you, you know, I guess everybody actually has some experience on this, but recently, you know, would you like to touch on what your athletes were doing?
Yeah, you know, I'll say heading into the event, a lot of encouraging them to, you know, to get rest, to sleep an appropriate amount, and I think that's frankly important all the time, right? Whether you're a professional gamer or, you know, anyone, though, you know, I don't know that our staff necessarily found that balance the last few weeks, right, Dylan? But, you know, we definitely viewed that as important. You know, they're obviously, you know, spending a lot of time practicing scrimming, but wanting to find that balance both mentally and physically, right? And then they took a couple days off after the event. They were back. Back today was the first day that they'd really been back on a normal schedule. You know, for our league, there's a lot of ebbs and flows to the schedule. We actually don't have another competitive match for almost a month. The next event is in London in a couple weeks, not this weekend, the following weekend. We're not actually in that event, so we have. Our next event is the 21st and 22nd, maybe it's 22nd and 23rd of February. So there's some time in there. We'll give the players, you know, we're one of about half the teams in our league that require the players to live in the city that they're based. And I think the last time I was here, we talked a little bit about that philosophy. But aside from the benefits that comes from having them under one roof, we're also flexible. So when they have a month or a few weeks between competitive matches, we will give them a week off. They can go home. Sometimes they'll continue to scrim from wherever they are, but they don't necessarily have to stay local if there's an extended break in the schedule.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, that's definitely a nice schedule. I mean, for us last year, we had games once a week, and they were in New York City, and all of our players lived in Minnesota. So if we took like 2 days off after an event, that would be, you know, more than half of our practice time, which made it more or less impossible to take, you know, 2 or especially 3 days off in a row. So for us, it's really go, go, go throughout the whole season. When it comes to preparing for a big event, there's a ton of things that I could tell you that I would do or I would recommend for them. But I mean, from where I sit, it's really up to the players, right? Because you're not in their room at 11 p.m. at night forcing them to go to bed. They're adults. They have to make that decision for themselves. So like you were saying, you know, it's great like that your players are really invested in their health, and I think that's where the choices come in, right? Like you're not spoon feeding the players special food. You're not, you know, telling them when they have to go to bed every night. You know, I think a lot of it is on the players. I think that especially as you get close to like the semifinals and the finals and things like that, players will start to say, okay, yeah, we're going to eat healthy today. We're going to go to bed early. You know, we're not going to go out the night before. But especially when you're playing so consistently, it's hard to just say, you know, we're going to go to bed at 9 o'clock every single night or whatever. So, you know, during the course of the regular season, I would say it's A, really on the players, and B, it's hard with just the schedule. But in preparation for those big events, I think typically what I've seen is people kind of buckle down once it gets to playoff time.
Well, I think that's probably something that's going to change too in the next couple of years, especially as Brett was mentioning how having the team all like together in one city makes it so much easier to control that, and also essentially to provide support for the players. So depending on how much you are forcing them to work with a trainer or nutritionist or psychologist, whatever, like however structure you add to that, at least that's there. But I think probably what's going to happen is that's going to be more and more required, especially the more teams are brought in-house and you can control that situation. I mean, without like overly controlling it, but I think that's probably where you'll see the edge of the teams that start to take that a little bit more seriously before. But right now, and currently the way the industry is, it's just, there's not enough support there to do that for most teams and
Right.
players. So it's like, yeah, the players that are proactive and do it themselves are usually the ones that you start to see excel or influence their teammates to perform better.
Like I think sleep is a big one. You know, I personally believe in it, but I think one of the issues is that, you know, in our community in particular with 2K, a lot of the pro-amateur matches and a lot of the like games that people are playing against each other, especially in the off season, usually are from about 11 until 2 a.m. Central Time. It's kind of like prime playing time. So, which is pretty crazy, right? Like I like never stay up that late, so I'm pretty shocked. But like there's a couple of players that I've worked with in the past that, you know, they typically go to bed sometime between 2 and 4:30 a.m. That would be like pretty typical. So then trying to, you know, get up for an 8 a.m. flight and then play that night is really challenging. And that's like the culture. You know, it's kind of weird for one of the players in the league to go to bed before 1 a.m.
Yeah, it's very common on
kinda
our
weird.
team too. And like, so leading up to like bigger events, you got, you know, teams scrimming all the time. Our Apex team was scrimming for a 2-week league, or they're in a 2-week long league. 10 of those days, it was from 5 p.m. to 11 p.m. And then before that, obviously they're scrimming, doing stuff to get warmed up for about 2 hours. And they're doing that for, 2 weeks straight. And then, you know, league does just about as much, if not more, you know, rigorous scrimming, practicing to get them ready for their big events and leagues. And, you know, yeah, you guys touched on a lot of good points that would relate specifically to us too. And with the amateur scene, I mean, it's just really incredible of what they do to try to get prepared and how there is a lack of management there. I mean, you can only do so much when they're not like under your same roof as you. And you got to trust them, basically, is what you got to do, and try to put your foot down and get them to follow the right schedule. But afterwards, I mean, yeah, people will play for hours and hours, and I feel like there's a point where you're playing and you're playing for a purpose, and when you're just playing to play for 10 hours or whatever it is, that's where it's going to mentally wear you down and can screw you up after a while. Where if you're playing with a purpose, you're working on skills, you're actually playing to get something out of it, you know, that's really helpful. But that's where it can get dangerous too, is if you're just playing for a countless amount of hours and have no reason to be doing it or working on something behind it, and you're just, your vision, whatever it may be, you're just screwing up over the long